Hey everyone! Welcome to our third virtual class for this semester and our final one. I'm excited to see how we're going to go through this next class session because this time we're talking about intimacy. And I have a few exercises for you to engage in. So let's get started. So in thinking about how you're going to go through this presentation, you want to have some pieces of paper next to you, lined paper maybe, but also some blank pages. So for the first exercise, I want you to explore a little bit about kind of our inner and outer reality when we think about intimacy, and look at interpersonal communication, thinking about both context and quality. This is an exercise that I'm hoping will complement your readings. So again, it becomes an experiential process of learning. So if you just follow the directions, it should be quite simple in terms of how you're going to do this exercise. And so just, again, go through all the directions. The first one asks you to make 2 lists, and then you're going to make a second set of 2 lists, and then reflect on the question below. Now, normally in our class, I would then have us reflect and pair up to discuss this. So for now, just skip this slide. Moving further into the presentation, I also want you to explore the language of intimacy. Because in Western society, we have a tendency to sexualize everything, in particular intimacy. And when we think about intimacy, we think about it often through sexualized terms. What I'd like you to do is stretch out the meaning of intimacy, that maybe intimacy could also encompass other aspects of who we are that may not necessarily be related so directly to a sexualized version of intimacy. It can be related to sexuality, which is an expression of who we are, but not sexualized in the sense that it has to do with a sexual attraction, be that a sexual attraction leading towards something like intercourse or even dating, romantic. Usually that's how we look at intimacy, through a romantic sexualized version. So again, stretching that out a little further, these next activities ask you to really think about intimacy in different ways. So of course, to do these activities, I'm going to ask you to draw your little person as we've done before in our class. And that's on a different set of different blank piece of paper. After you draw your person, what I'd like you to do is to then watch this video. And as you're watching this video, I want you just to kind of write down some of the feelings that come up for you, some of the thoughts, the reflections you're having. This is an artist. He's a Japanese artist doing Japanese calligraphy. And it just really is very moving. And you can see the intimate relationship that he has with his brush and with the calligraphy and with the art. What I'd like you to do is on the inside of your person, write down those feelings that come up when you watch this. And on the outside, write down the thoughts that come up. And so again, moving further into the experience, I want you to start thinking about intimacy through the eyes of a poet. And so this is Jaha Zainabu. She's an incredibly wonderful and talented poet, spoken word artist from Leimert Park in Los Angeles. What I'd like you to do when you watch this is not really focus on the images of the video, but really on her voice and on the words that she's describing the experience of the person in this poem. So again, with your little person on the inside, feelings that come up, on the outside, thoughts that come up. I really encourage you to do this exercise maybe with your eyes closed because the images can be distracting. So instead, really just listening to her words and to the way that she intones these words as an artist. And so hopefully by the end of this experience, you've really stretched out and you've begun to realize that intimacy really has a much wider window than we often allow it to have. Because in Western society, we have a tendency to want to box intimacy. And I say Western society because it has been we have all been deeply impacted by colonialism all around the world. And so it only usually gives one dominant worldview of who we are, and intimacy then gets boxed in. And so with this idea of boxing and intimacy, I'd like you to finally watch this last video. It's a closing clip of the movie Moonlight, which many find to be an exploration of a young man coming of age and finding his sexuality. I see it also, and maybe more, of the journey of a young man who was unable to embrace all of who he was, and not necessarily thinking about whether he's homosexual or not homosexual, but thinking of all the aspects of who he was as a human being, his emotions, how he expresses emotion, that deeply intimate calling within all of us to connect to other human beings, regardless of gender. And when we watch clips like this one, how we make decisions about people, in particular men, who show this level of intimacy with each other. And so finally, after that video, going back to your little person, think about how can we make room for everyone, so that they don't have to choose. They don't have to say, oh, if I'm this kind of person, then I must be X or I must be Y. Instead, maybe we can start making room for everyone and all of their varying levels of expression of intimacy. And in order to help you with this last piece of the assignments, I want you to just jump onto this Padlet and write down a reflection. This reflection, at least 2 ahas that you've had from today's experience or from this class's experience. And you can take this reflection and put it in your journal that we always write at the end of class. And so this journal, as we always have, you'll find it here, the weekly in-class journal. You can then even copy and paste what you wrote in the Padlet if you'd like. You can expand. It's just a place to kind of reflect about this experience as a class. For next reading, we're going to cover sexuality. So that's chapter 11. And so make sure that you're ready for that class by having read that and also looking through the presentation. And then I have an after class reader's response for you to complete. And that's one that has to do with violence against women and date rape. And you will find more information about that in your reading from this week's reading on intimacy. I also want to give you an opportunity to submit a proposal for your final project idea. You will not be graded on this proposal. This is merely an opportunity for you to be able to share what you're thinking about, some ideas that you're having. Maybe you want to give me an outline, and I can give you feedback before you jump in too deep with your final project. And finally, as promised, here's the class poll so that you can let me know how you're feeling about whether or not we're going to have our last class session on during finals week or the week before. And with that, have a wonderful week, and I look forward to seeing you our next class session. All right, talk soon.